Welcome to a special HouseCast. This is the 10th anniversary of Resogun. It was my first game at Housemark, but we have Ilari here, Henry here, Harry's here. Everybody here has worked on Resogun, right? So the first question is, do you guys remember the conception of the game idea or how it came to be?
Well, it was a busy years at Housemark at that time, so was trying to remember what we did during these months when we were probably
Wasn't
thinking about that.
Pet School? Pet School was the founder.
So I remember that there was this idea of creating this group of games that would
That's
have the Reso prefix. So there was Reso Man, that was a platformer. Reso Castles, that was supposed to be a strategy game.
Right.
And then there was also Resogun, that was supposed to be a shooter. And the common theme was that they would all be playing with voxels as the main kind of visual element.
Was there a specific reason why voxels was chosen, just because of retro and tech, angle?
That's what it seemed like at the time. I mean, I think the idea was that, just bringing that kind of, old school, timeless gameplay kind of values to the next level, with like full HD and like 60 FPS and like
Physics.
just really pushing it more.
Yeah.
So that's where the Reso, it's like high resolution, and that's where the whole
And
idea
Resogun
came
was the
from.
only one out of these concepts, I think, that made it to that stage of launch.
Yeah,
Sure.
and
Yeah.
you know that historically we've had a really big problem naming our games.
Yeah.
So much that there was a documentary made out of it. Anyway, but Resogun was the working title, the project name, and
Right.
also ended up being the final name as well.
But what was Radiant Silvergun then?
Radiant
Radiant
Pixel.
Radiant Silvergun was an actual
Was
game.
a
Actual
Radiant
game.
reference,
Yeah,
of course, a timeless one.
And also, we did have Rocklin, the mobile project. That
We had
for while.
Reso
Yeah.
Castles made it to
Yes, it became Rocklin.
Right. So back to Resogun, the first prototypes and demos. When were they made? Because I remember seeing a non-circular one, which was the Radiant Pixel, right?
Yeah,
Or
so
was it a
I never
circular?
saw that one.
Well, I saw early prototype videos.
There was a target render
Right.
made back then, and I remember that Harry, Housemark's creative director, put together this video that basically was the prototype or a concept video of the game, right? Target render. Whenever you think of voxels, you think of like so many possibilities. You think of like using them as building blocks, quite literally. That you collect them and you construct things and you throw them against enemies and have physics, and all of that stuff, of course, was discarded pretty soon in
Yeah.
development because it conflicted a lot with the streamlined arcade-focused gameplay we wanted to create.
How long was Resogun in production? When did the production start?
that's a pretty good question. I think we started pitching that in 2011. All of those games, and if you think we were really busy at delivering games, so November 2010 we got Dead Nation out. In April 2011 we got Outline out, which Harry was the lead programmer there.
Right.
Gameplay program.
Gameplay programmer. Then we got Super Stardust Delta out in February 2012
On the PS Vita.
on PS Vita. So I think around that time, actually, we also started Alienation at that time, like winter 2012. So I think maybe it was a kind of on the side of 2011 when we started to think about or prototyping Resogun. So
Yeah.
that's my guess, that it started like late 2011.
I remember that the concepting work started quite early. It's hard to remember exactly when the hands-on development kind of started, but
Yeah.
I ballpark it around 2 years total.
Yeah,
Resogun started as a PS Vita project, right?
and PS3.
PS3, yeah.
PS3 and Vita, so multi-platform, and it changed to a PS4 launch project about a year before
8
launch.
months.
8
Then we
months?
got the
Yeah.
That's what I figured.
8 months.
It was
It
crazy,
was-
right?
Yeah.
Rocklin during the summer. It was a huge deal, but
Yeah.
it came in pretty late.
It
I still
was-
remember picking up the dev kits.
Yeah, it was when spring was happening, right?
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, we got the new dev kits, and then we started developing for that.
Yeah, and it's so cool because a lot of the most defining things of the game, of course, were how it utilized the PS4 hardware.
Yeah.
It just cranked up all of the
Which was
particles
done
explosion, which was
in
done in that last
8 months.
focused stretch. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we hit the launch date as well.
This is a long history of Housemarque games that have launch, hardware launch. So PSP, PS Vita, PS3 was kind of
PS3,
close.
we were pretty close here in Europe, at least. I
Right.
think 2 months after PS3 launched.
Yeah.
So we got Superstars HD
Yeah.
out.
But then Resogun was the launch title for PS4, and it was the PS4 version was done in, let's say, 8 months, and the game got a bit of a. It had a certain tone to it, but I think the darker tone got locked in. A lot of the visual effects were added at the very late part. Anything you guys have to say about the technology or the appeal of what the visuals look like?
So there's a few things there. So it was actually built on the code base of Superstars Delta.
Right.
Because we had a lot of the code of like basically mapping a 2D game onto a sphere. And
Right.
now we just had to adapt the code to work on a cylinder.
Right.
So it's the pseudo 2D kind of gameplay, but in a 3D space.
So we took a sphere and we just made it a
Effectively,
cylinder.
yeah. A lot of the subsystems were already there. We had this really cool kind of fiber system that allowed us to, juice a lot of the CPU, get a lot of performance out of the hardware. Regarding the tech, the biggest, of course, breakthrough of innovation there was utilizing the PS4's ability to use compute shaders, right? So compute shaders are basically just a chunk of code that can run on the GPU, and it's ideal for processing a lot of small chunks of data that need to be iterated on a lot. Perfect for things like particles, right? So although it was the first game that we used as a test bed for this compute shader technology, especially for the particle effects, so it was a bit of a hybrid. We had a lot of the traditional kind of particle effects, similar to what we had in our previous games, but things like the overdrive, the shock wave, the smart bomb, and also all of the individual voxels when the enemies actually blow up. All of those are individually simulated on the GPU. So I think that was the one feature that allowed us to just take that visual flair and fidelity and just take it to the next level.
Which is weird because those weren't possible on the previous generation to that extent, at least.
Not to that level of quality and fidelity.
So it was a good thing that we decided to move to the PS4.
Oh, I think it was an amazing opportunity, and I think we made the most of it, right?
Resogun is probably my favorite Housemarque game because it's very easily accessible. Ilari can even play it.
Well, debatable.
Well, both of us have a sort of a backseat players.
We have 5 different difficulty settings.
Oh yeah,
surely one
the
of
brain
them.
dead one is the one.
Exactly, that's the one.
No, actually, it was
Secret
Dead Nation had
unlockable.
that.
Yeah. But how do you guys feel about the game? I mean, there's good boss fights. What's your favorite moments out of Resogun in terms of the game itself?
I'd probably say the boss fights. I think it has almost the best boss fights throughout all more arcade specific titles.
Which boss specifically?
Biome or level 4, I'd say, where we come with the long columns up and down. Is it? Yeah, it's supposed to be the 4th.
Yeah.
The snake. Right?
Third one is the one that breaks off, right?
Yeah.
It's the 5th one.
That's the
What's the
fifth
4th
one.
one? What's the cube? That's 3rd. Second?
Yeah. The 3rd one was the bouncing ball. Right?
Yeah. What was the second then?
It's
The
another
second one
sphere.
was
It's another circular one. Because the first boss is the circular one when you go in.
Yeah,
The second one is similar looking one, and then I forget. But it's been 10 years. Come on, guys. It's been
I
a
haven't
while.
played it in a bit.
But you love the bosses that nobody remembers.
Oh yeah, sure, absolutely.
Even you
So,
don't remember.
I remember demoing the game to you in
The old PR room.
Yeah.
And one of the tricks that I did was push, because it's basically the player ship model is 1 pixel,
Yeah.
tiny as it can be.
Yeah.
And my ship's model was overlapping with the boss, and you were wondering why or how am I doing that? And,
I remember. So for me as well, because there's visually you can see that 1 pixel that is your life, And for me, it was weird because I didn't get it at first because I thought the whole model. But of course, we have 3 different ships, so we couldn't have hitboxes for all the ships as they are fully. So of course, a single pixel.
It's also like arcade tradition.
That's what I
Yeah,
was gonna get.
The whole game is paying homage to.
So there's a lot of arcade history here. Japanese games have perfected a lot of these formulas. These genres, of course, are more or less dead, as the rest of arcade, as we know. But what games do you guys think this drew inspiration from?
Well, I remember playing a lot of Dodonpachi at the time, so cave shooters were a massive influence for me as well. I think even just getting like that combo system where you're just trying to ride that wave and just accumulating that high stakes kind of gameplay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that those always have been a really big inspiration. And of course, the more bullet hell kind of games like Treasure has always been, an amazing inspiration. And just bringing a lot of that hectic kind of, it's like bringing that action to a point where it feels like it's just about to spiral out of control, but you still manage to keep it on rails, And I think that's where a lot of the magic happens, just on that edge.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that was we played a lot more. We introduced a lot more like bullet hell kind of elements there, and I think it helped kind of like set, from my perspective, the foundations or start crystallizing a lot of the Housemarque kind of arcade DNA, like the creative philosophy, like a lot of the ideas of like having depth without complexity, having layered goals for the player, competing objectives, the idea of like riding that wave of success, having that sharp edge to the gameplay as well, and the instant flow and all of those things. And we would eventually capitalize and refine all of those for the next title, next Mikey Man. That was in many ways a spiritual successor to Returnal.
Within that similar engine pipeline as well.
Yeah.
It's really wonderful to see kind of the runs that people were able to put in, because if I remember correctly, harder levels you actually have the revenge bullets. So when you kill an enemy, they spawn bullets, and then there was also the fact that humans needed to be saved, and there was human juggling. If you remember human juggling, which for me is the most fun feature in any game, really, is that not only do you get to save the humans, but you get to throw them around.
Boost and throw.
Yeah, exactly.
Seeing them go around the
Boost
bend.
and throw and
And see
they
them suck that into the thing. Yeah. That's
Once
some pretty
we-
good gameplay.
Once we got closer to launch, I have to say that I booked a lot of press. There was a launch event in New York, big PlayStation 4 launch event. They rented out a hotel, and I went to San Francisco. But then people were telling me from Sony's side that how are you going to demonstrate the game, because nobody has PlayStation 4. And I said, well, I'll just take the dev kit with me, which was a big no-no. But I had already booked the flights. So they're like, I guess you're doing it then. But yeah, I went to San Francisco, and then you arrived. We went to New York for the actual event. And there was a lot of press. Let's say that we weren't the biggest draw for press. There were a bunch of other launch titles there too.
I don't buy that.
Well, there were some fans already during the initial. I think there was 2 days when the press could test the games, and then mostly some people had the copies as well, because then on the 3rd day it was launched and Metacritics came out. And I remember wearing a T-shirt with Resogun coming down the elevator. I got noticed with the T-shirt because Resogun happened to be one of the better rated launch titles. So it was sort of the small engine that could. But I don't think anybody expected us to really, I mean, we didn't steal the show, but with the scope of the project, being so small, I think that output was quite large.
It's punching way above its weight.
Yeah.
How do you guys,
Housemarque way.
do you guys remember anything special about the launch? I remember we had some of the leaderboards guys still on top. Same people.
Yeah, getting to know those all extremely good players.
One of the highlights of my career.
You're still friends with some of the people.
Oh yeah, for sure. And one silly anecdote was I went to buy a 4K capture card so that we could make GIFs of the voxel explosions.
Right.
That we could then start posting around.
with the black magic card.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember
It's
that.
still somewhere in the office, but
Collecting dust.
yeah, there's still that. When the reveal trailer came out with the actual gameplay in it, and people started cropping couple second snippets of the Armageddon.
Mm.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. Like there was hype online for Resogun and Housemarque overall. Actually, the audience is fairly small, but
Yeah, I think that was the game that, because of the availability, because it was free
Yeah,
on PlayStation for the first 6 months.
something like that. Yeah.
Quite a few months. Yeah.
yeah.
So I think it was sort of available, and I think that's how the name became known a bit better. And I think even when we went to events, we got recognized. I mean, that was the game people were bringing up because everybody had tested it. It was easy to pick up and play. A weird moment seeing it being out there, and then sort of, like you said, the Pixel Armageddon, the Voxel Armageddon was a very GIF-ready visual.
Yeah, I think it ended up being quite a nice showcase for the platform.
oh yeah,
I think because we were actually pushing the hardware quite a bit with like the compute shaders and just the visual spectacle. Like there was even those animated GIFs they couldn't capture like the splendor
No,
of the
not at all.
explosions at all.
like we had to set up two solid state drives in RAID 0 so that we could capture the 1K 60 frames per second almost as native as we could have. And yeah, that even didn't do justice, but
It was honestly, some of the GIFs that we did were really bad, but then eventually we got like really good high frame rate GIFs.
oh yeah,
But
eventually.
then some of the fan GIFs were actually even better.
Yeah, sure. They have the gear.
How do you guys feel about the DLC? Because we did a bunch of DLC. I think you were leading that.
Yeah,
We did too.
we did two.
Yeah.
So there was Heroes and Defenders. So one had basically the endless mode.
Right.
And it's another staple of many of our games. And also had the
Wrecking Ball.
Wrecking Ball mode. Yeah,
Yeah,
that one.
that one.
It was cool. And that was a really fun time actually. We got to prototype a lot of different ideas for like basically the DLC game modes.
Which were very much homages for other.
Some were homage, some were a bit more experimental.
Yeah,
Um,
especially the Wrecking Ball.
Yeah,
But wasn't that kind of based off?
there
Never
was a
mind.
demolition mode, right?
Demolition.
Yeah. So in that one you can't actually shoot. You just use your
Yeah.
your
You have
boost explosion.
Yeah.
And you just bounce the balls around. So anyway, it was
I
really fun.
remember.
Yeah. And we had the endless mode. And we did prototype a couple of other things for the second DLC. The first one was a little bit more straightforward, like what we wanted to achieve. We had the endless mode, we had the ship editor.
Yes.
Remember?
Yeah.
Make your own ships.
We had Wipeout ships.
Then we
that
had some
Sony
visual
wanted
kind
in.
of
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
sponsored
Some
white
Halloween
ships.
thing there. I think
Yeah,
that
with
we had a lot of
we had some humans.
thematic-
Humans as well.
Yeah. Thematic
Cool, yeah,
humans.
that you could unlock on different holidays
Yeah.
and stuff like that. So
Bunch of feats, in-game achievements, and
Yeah.
progression system.
and challenges as well. And I think I remember that we had prototypes. We thought, okay, the boost seems to be a pretty fun mechanic in the game. Everybody loves it. Why not make it? Why not make a mode that you just focus on boost, right?
Yeah.
And you would hit some like ridiculous speeds in that. You know, you just be going around and collecting power ups, and you break the sound barrier.
Was this supposed to the racing mode?
It wasn't racing mode per se, but it was just boosting around and collecting points and all that stuff. And it was seconds of fun, until the motion sickness kicked in. It kind of felt like you just put your head in like a washing machine.
But some of the
So it
challenges
was quite intense.
came out of that prototyping. For example,
That's true.
challenges that remain boosting as long as you can.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
And it was,
The feats and the
Yeah.
different things.
so yeah, they came out of the prototyping of the
Yeah.
boost mode.
Yeah, one interesting thing about DLC, the second DLC had this commando mode, and I always kind of was thinking that, it kind of completed our great tribute to great American arcade classics. Like we had done kind of a homage to Asteroids, we done Defender, of course, and then Missile Commando. Basically, was Missile Command was basically commando mode inspiration. And of course, we had other ones coming up, and of the top-down shooters. But it's kind of kind of wrapping up the history, and in a sense we were the last guys actually continued still to make these pure arcade games with Nex Machina. And when the companies like Cave and Treasure, the early 2010s, they had their last games basically. So we were the last guys. We felt we were the last guys standing basically.
Yeah.
And pushed the last time that Nex Machina. Hope for the best, but that was a swan song for us.
Resogun was awarded some awards. DICE, I think we were up for nomination for the best action game of the year.
Yeah.
Then you met Eugene Jarvis there.
Yeah, that's it started the new thing.
So
sure.
then that went into Nex Machina again, that Eugene was at least consulting to some extent.
Yeah, we had a great honor. Harry was there, Chairman Benny, me were at the DICE, and this is February 2014.
Yeah.
So we met Eugene is there, like he was getting his lifetime achievement award.
Yeah, right.
We went to talk to him, and hey, we did this. Like,
have you seen this Resogun?
Resogun, and I don't know. I think he hadn't played that.
No, but he went home.
But then,
then
he got that, and then actually we got an idea a month later. Maybe we should collaborate with that guy, and the rest is history. And there's even some documentary evidence what we did.
Even like the story of Nex Machina is intended to be a continuation of
Resogun.
So there is a thematic connection there. So if you finish, so we didn't have that big like cinematics or epic endings, right? We basically had a screen with some text, and that was your reward.
Yeah, right.
And if you finish the game on the highest difficulty, you get this the sleeping in light kind of ending, where it's supposedly you sacrifice the last amount of your energy to eradicate the macrocosmic threat, and then a light appears, and you gain your rightful place among the cosmic heroes of the galaxy. And the idea is that in Nex Machina, you are that same cosmic hero that comes back to Earth to save it once again from like the
robots. That's right. So it's the same character?
Technically, yeah. Technically,
it's within from the same pantheon of cosmic
we even had
heroes.
that idea of like the cinematic with like the pantheon of like the cosmic heroes, and the guy with the motorbike just flies to Earth and just starts blowing up robots. But anyway, so there is that thematic connection there as well. And the voice of Housemark, of course, permeated a lot of our titles.
That's right. The Save the Last Humans.
Save the Last Humans.
Yeah.
Power Up, Weapon Up.
And Ari Pulkkinen was there making the music and a lot of the sound stuff for both games, so Nex and actually from Stardust.
Also voiced the Commando.
Oh yeah.
Voiced the Commando.
Yeah.
A lot of the
Arnie.
Yeah.
It's Arnie.
Yeah, actually, I almost remember the moments when you could go to Ari's room and hear about the next song or theme or this is great.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a great game. Because the music was already
Resogun soundtrack was great.
great. So.
I think Harri Tikkanen had some input in that as well. He was always very much like no, but we got a lot of orchestral, like a lot of very cool.
It was cinematic as well.
Yeah, because it felt
Extremely
big.
Yeah, I think the title screen music especially was really dramatic.
Oh yeah.
And that's also like as a swan song, because you mentioned Commando earlier. So Commando is supposed to finish the Resogun story, right? And that's why when you're fighting the boss in Commando, it plays the title screen music.
Right.
So it's bookending the experience like that.
Yeah. So Resogun probably has the most post-launch support of any of our titles. Yeah.
And 2 DLCs,
Yeah. Alien Nation had one content.
Yeah, that was reduced, quite a lot reduced.
Yeah.
When we did that.
We have a lot of plans usually.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And like the Returnal DLC isn't a snoozer either. Like there's a lot of content.
The Returnal DLC
Of course, the biggest
huge,
in a sense of work.
I think for how different to Resogun, at least personally, is that when Resogun went gold, we knew that we were going to work on a DLC, and basically we already knew what we were going to start work on the next Monday.
Yeah.
And in Returnal, it was a bit more exploratory, and
Yeah.
wondering what we could do.
Yeah, and it's much more complex in a way. And we had the ship editor was kind of already.
Yeah.
We were lining that up, and things made more sense.
Yeah, but I think at their core, they share a lot of the same creative philosophies. Like
Absolutely.
Resogun and Returnal and all of our other games in between. And it is that, the depth of that complexity is to easily get into, hard to master. And I think, when we talk about Resogun and Stardust and Ex Machina, we say it's homage to older titles. There's often that tendency to just attribute that adoration to nostalgia. But for me, it's never been about nostalgia. It's about the timeless gameplay values that permeate the medium, and those are still relevant today.
Absolutely.
Those fundamentals will always be relevant because they tap into the part of the brain that feels satisfaction when it gets things done, when it sees feedback, when it sees shit blow up.
I think we added quite a bit to this shoot 'em up genre, if you like. So all this complexity, when it comes to scoring systems, all the things that I think layers upon layers. I don't know whether Cave or Treasure had it at that level, but I think we added something to this genre in general.
And they had their own way of doing things.
Sure, of course, but
Which was
we
maybe-
had our own perspective, and of course we had a bit different philosophy. It wasn't that you always need to remember everything, every bullet pattern. It's not, but it will be like more.
It's written.
More, yeah. It's
We're constantly, we're technically the player is on a very intuitive timer.
Exactly.
In our arcade games.
so it's a kind of a difference between the Japanese shooters and ours, for instance. So
Yeah.
kind of there's a different philosophy there.
Overall, this is something that clearly 10 years we forget stuff.
Oh yeah.
So it's good to, reminisce and get back to the game itself. PS4 was very successful for us. Resogun being a huge milestone with the company going forward, and of course, you guys being there over 10 years ago, coming up with a lot of these things, shipping a title in a time frame that these days just is incomprehensible, doing a lot of the testing that you could do with this. What was the team size for Resogun at its peak? 12?
Yeah, it wasn't more than maybe 15 people.
Right.
At its peak. I mean, we did have shared resources between projects because we always had two projects running simultaneously.
even three at best.
Yeah, so we had
Actually, at the
we had
time,
three projects.
actually, yeah.
Yeah, Lachlan, AN, Resin.
That's true. That's true.
And you got to wear many hats.
Everybody got to wear many hats.
If you wanted, you could. And
At that point, even marketing was designing stuff when things needed to be done, right?
Yeah.
It's the garage band mentality.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, we've come a long way, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, for
In
sure.
10 years, this small company has become a slightly bigger than a small company.
Slightly bigger first party Sony studio, yeah.
Right, that's true too. But this is a part of the long history with Sony where I think, it took a long time to set things up to this, the trust and the cooperation, many titles we got to work with them and really get things together, so.
Yeah, and it's interesting because even when reflecting on Returnal recently as well, I mean, of course, we had a lot of different influences, inspirations, right? Cosmic horror, dark sci-fi, roguelikes, everything. But always, when we talked about what game we're making, I always said our biggest reference is our own games.
Yeah.
So don't look at what they're doing, look at what we did with Next Machina, with Alienation, with Resogun. That is what we're trying to do and bring it to the next level.
Yes.
With Return.
With a little different camera.
Slightly different packaging, yeah.
It's a heritage that not many companies have. This is a unique heritage in Scandinavia or Northern or Europe in general to have this bullet hell arcade heritage.
That's our mission statement as well, to bring arcade sensibilities to the wider masses. And it's kind of,
Yes.
I love it.
One day we will
Yeah.
fully succeed. but
Well,
it's-
and on the other hand, we're only 28-year-old company.
Yeah, there's still
So
plenty
we're just
for 'em.
getting started.
Yeah,
But imagine 10 years now with Resogun 2. It seems like yesterday, but now that we really try to reminisce, it's kind of hard to remember
Yeah.
a lot of the details.
That's true.
I have so many anecdotes that I would like to talk about, but maybe they're not all meant for this session. But I want to thank you all This has been wonderful, and I think at least some of the super hardcore fans will appreciate this level of insight that we really haven't been able to kind of give of Resogun. Yeah, maybe in 10 years we'll be looking back again. Maybe the classics have a long life in some way. But Ilari, Henry, Harry, thank you. Long live Resogun, if we can end it.
The arcade.
Long live the arcade.
Yeah, that's a good ending.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Guys. Pleasure.